We have some sad news from the world of entertainment just coming into our newsroom. Canadian actor Donald Sutherland has died. His son, Kiefer, confirming the news on social media. Sutherland was 88 years old. His career on the screen spanned 7 decades, known for his roles in projects like MASH, The Dirty Dozen, and Ordinary People. Again, Donald Sutherland has died at the age of 88. All right, let's bring in Chris Bumbray, film critic and managing editor at JoeBlow.com. Tell us about Donald Sutherland. What roles will he be most remembered for?
Oh, I mean, it's hard to even, there are so many classics. So I'm writing up his obit for the website that I run here, and just going down the list of roles they did. I mean, there was MASH, there was Clute, there was Ordinary People. I mean, there was JFK. There was the Dirty Dozen, and then I mean, also really well known to modern audiences too, because he was in the Hunger Games series as the main villain, All This Snow. I mean, just an amazing career. What's interesting about Donald Sutherland, though, so he was a Canadian, of course, and he first kind of made his headway into the industry by doing roles in Europe, right? Because he was one of the few people accepted into the London Academy of Dramatic Arts, and his big breakout was in this movie, The Dirty Dozen. And originally he was basically just supposed to be a glorified extra, but there's a scene in the film where he does this kind of mock inspection that everybody says made him a star. The guy who was supposed to do that role was this guy named Trini Lopez, and he decided he didn't want to film the scene for some reason. And they gave it to Donald Sutherland instead, and it basically made him a mega star. And within like a year or two, he was starring in MASH and became one of the biggest stars of the 70s. One thing to note about him, though, that's kind of interesting is that he's widely been considered the greatest living actor at the time to have never been nominated for an Oscar. Never won an Oscar, never nominated for an Oscar, despite the fact that he was in many Oscar winners and many of the, what are widely considered the greatest films of all time, which is kind of shocking, because I would have thought that was when I was doing my coverage, I was sure that Donald Sutherland had won an Oscar at some point, but no, didn't happen.
That is very interesting. What kind of actor was Donald Sutherland? How seriously did he take his roles?
I mean, he took his craft very seriously. I mean, he could do comedy, and I mean, MASH is essentially a dark comedy, but he was one of those guys that was kind of a new breed. I think when the golden age of Hollywood was on its way out, and these new kind of younger actors were on their way up. I mean, him opposite Elliot Gould, Jane Fonda, all these Robert De Niro, Al Pacino, all these people that kind of came around in the 70s, they were considered kind of the new guard. And one thing about him is he was always very outspoken politically, very liberal, anti-nukes, anti-war, got him into a lot of trouble back in the 70s, led to a brief blacklisting period. But, he always came back. He had that face, and those eyes and that voice that were just so dynamic. I mean, you couldn't take your eyes off of him, and he was so iconic. I actually met him once at a party a couple of years ago, which was great. I just walked over to him and I said, "Hey, Mr. Sutherland, just wanted to say I'm a huge fan of yours." And he was a really nice guy, shook my hand, and I'm glad I got to do that. Because I think, especially as a Canadian, he's one of our greatest actors ever. So, what a legacy!
All right, we will have to leave it there. Chris Bumbray, film critic and managing editor at JoeBlow.com. Thank you very much for your insights. We appreciate chatting with you today.